one last test of Ability Zard. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch and today we're going to have one last look at Ability Zard. This is the deck that I have played for most of the last 3 months. If there's been a competitive event, then there's been a pretty good chance that this is the deck that I've been playing. It's a good fun one and it looks like it's going to be out of favour when it comes to Sword and Shield, so I figured what I'd do is I'd just show off the list, considering I've got a League Cup today, show off the list that I'm playing and show some of the testing games that I had a couple of nights before the tournament began. So we'll take a look. This is the list here. There it is. We won't have it up on the screen for very long. What I've done is I've edited together some gameplay, so if you want to go back we can take a look at it a bit later on. So what I've got here is I've got 4 games that I have played over the last couple of days in my testing. I've obviously played more, but I didn't want to leave the ones in that kind of had people just scooping after the first couple of turns, because sometimes it's very easy to tell if you're going to win with Ability Zard or not based on the opening hand that you get. So it's definitely worth a look at. And this one here, this is the type of hand that's not super strong. We've got Turtonator, Mew, a couple of Dedenne, we've got a Hearth, so that's good. I'm going to be able to do stuff, but it's not going to be a super great turn unless something goes really well. I mean, I've got a Pokemon Communication as well, but still not super good. I personally play Mew. I don't like Mewtwo sniping Turtonators on the bench, so I play Mew in order to resolve that issue. Look at that, we're playing ADP as well, so if we get a good start here, we could very easily find ourselves in a winning position. My list, I play 2 Heatran. I play in Adelaide, so everyone's always playing Malamar, and Heatran is really strong against Malamar, so I like to play 2 copies of that. It could also potentially give the deck life after Sword and Shield, but I'm not entirely sure, so we'll think about that one when it happens. Tossing up here where I attach this energy, I could attach it to the Mew, but decide against it, play down the Hearth, and then the Dedenne away. So I've got myself some stuff here. I've managed to draw into a Welder, which is really, really strong. Discard a Fire Energy and grab 2 more out of the deck. Obviously want to get my discard full of Fire Energy ready for those Victinis. And I've managed to get the Welder and the attachment on turn 1, which is pretty much all that this deck can ask for. Now I'll just switch into Jirachi and then Stellar Wish. Hopefully I can get myself Pokecom, and look at that, I have managed to get there. That means that I can play down this Pokecom, move away one of these Ninetales, and potentially get myself a Vulpix. Although, I don't actually really need to do that, to be honest, because I know my opponent's going to want to keep this ADP in the active. Best case scenario for me, they don't have any other Pokemon and I can find my way to victory next turn. Or, you know, ultimately, he's probably just going to attach and pass with something on the bench anyway. So Ability Zard tends to be really strong against decks like ADP, because they are very slow and Ability Zard's very fast. If you're playing in a meta with a heavy ADP presence, then I'd probably recommend it. If you're playing in a meta with a heavy ADP presence, you've probably got a lot of Gardevoir as well. We'll show off a matchup of that in this particular video too. And ReshiZard has a really, really strong matchup there too. I personally think that with 2 Heatran, Malamar is very winnable. Obviously, lots of people don't play Malamar, and obviously Mew Mew is a bit of an issue. But if you're not expecting it, which, I mean, it would be strange if you weren't expecting it, considering it's almost one of the best decks in the format, then I would say ReshiZard is probably a good play, but Mewtwo is a little bit too fast for it. You can get yourself into a bit of trouble. Opponent using Guzmahala here, they're going to play down Swell, which is an annoying card, but I do have access to Fiery Flint, and they choose actually not to play it there, so that's a massive error. It's going to allow me to do a little bit of creative play here. That Pokemon Communication that I saved from last turn can find me a Dedenne, and all I really need to do now is find a Welder. I can attach one of these energy to this Victini and find a Welder next turn, and I should be good to go. I'll play this Reset Stamp. I know they've got cards in their hand that I don't want them to have, so I'll get rid of them now, and if it comes up, then it comes up. Play down the second Dedenne, and we're away. All I'm looking for here is a welder, which I've got a couple of energy, and I've also got a switch. So this game is in the books. We've got 6 energy, which is going to allow us to attack with Turtonator. 300 damage will knock out everything in the format at the moment, so that's 1 knocked out ADP. Now, this isn't a particularly good example of how the matchup normally goes. Obviously, people normally get other Pokemon in play, but we've got another one coming up later. This one here is against Gardevoir. As I mentioned, we'll be playing a Gardevoir deck. Normally, Gardevoir, again, would be considered a very strong matchup. Gardevoir really struggles to deal with a Reshiram Charizard. It struggles to get to that 270. In fact, it's almost impossible for it to happen, so I wouldn't expect it to, which means that you can set up knockouts pretty easily. I've managed to start Jirachi here, which is strong, but you can see the hand is not super good, and this sometimes happens with Ability Zard. You get these big hands full of nothing. So hopefully Gardevoir can do me a favour and mulligan a couple of times. I can draw some extra cards here, take a look. So it looks like I'm only going to get 1. It's a Ninetales, which isn't super good, and I've got a Giant Hearth as well. I guess here it's not so bad. I can Pokecom away the Ninetales, find myself a Dedenne, and then be ready to discard this hand and find a new one. I might consider attaching an energy to this Turtonator as well. I'll, of course, play down the Hearth. And then bang, we'll just Dedenne those away. One of the things that I try and do is I try and make sure that I've got my access to Giant Hearth still available, so that if I do find a welder and no energy, I can get to them. So try and play that Giant Hearth after you've used your Dedenne. Here I've been very lucky. I've managed to find myself double welder and 4 energy, so that's super strong, but there's not a lot else going on here. I do still have a Stellar Wish, so it's definitely worth a look, and I think I'm probably going to take that switch, because in my eyes the key thing for me is that I need to remove myself from the active next turn. I could potentially play that extra Jirachi down. There's no reason really not to. I'm not expecting Gardevoir to attack, and this is actually a little bit of a faux pas here. Maybe shouldn't have switched there. I go for the Heat Factory here, I think, because I don't need Cherish Ball or Power Pad right now. Go for the Heat Factory, so I'm going to be able to draw some more cards, but this is all just greed, really. I should have just held on to that switch. There was no need to go for that, because I'm not expecting Jirachi to get knocked out this turn. No need to waste resources when it's not required. Opponent here getting a bit unlucky off of that Pokegear, only finding Faber, so they're going to remove the Giant Hearth for me, and let's see what they get off of this Pokegear. They can be a little bit lucky and not finding anything, so a bit of a wasted turn for our opponent. The best thing for me is that they missed their wait-and-see hammer off of greens. That's going to stop me taking a knockout. But the good thing about Turtonator and Heatran is that even if I do attack, I'll be attacking for 250 damage, so if I could keep that damage there, then my opponent won't be able to avoid a Mew Snipe unless I use Mallow and Lana, which is very kind of unlikely in the early game, especially with a low hand size, even if they had managed to find greens. But yes, here I'm in that awkward position where I should have probably just held onto the switch. If I held onto the switch, then I effectively win the game here. Go for the Heatran. The awkward thing about this particular turn is that I need to make sure that I've got 6 energy in play. I can take a knockout with either of them, but I need to know which one is more likely to get me into a knockout next turn. So it's kind of awkward. I found the Stellar Wish here. Found the Escape Board here, sorry. So that's not a big deal. I'm going to be able to retreat. So now the decision is, do I attack with Turtonator or do I attack with Heatran? Now, I don't have access to a welder yet, so I'm going to struggle to power up another attacker. What I could do is I could pile the energy onto Heatran and then GX, which would obviously get the knockout, but then my opponent could GX back and knock out my Heatran with all the energy on it. That would leave me in a bit of strife. I've got 4 energy in the bin, so there'll be 10 after that knockout, but I think I want to leave my GX attack active. Worst case scenario, I can build up over a couple of turns and try and get the knockout that way. I'll probably Explosive Jet this turn, but I am going to play down Victini because that's definitely my next easiest knockout if I'm able to find all those energies. So I'll discard 6 energy here, 300 damage with Turtonator. I've left myself very vulnerable. There's not a lot going on, but I do still have access to my GX attack, which is very important. 3 prizes is also pretty good here as well. That Mew being prized could have come up, but in the end didn't really. We've got another escape board, a couple of energy there. I've got access to Heat Factory and another Hearth, so if that doesn't get replaced, then I'll be A-okay. My opponent going for a tag call here, so if I had have just booped it for 250, then they would have been able to Mallow and Lana, which would have been very frustrating. They would have needed to remove pretty much their entire hand, but they could have done it. Now it looks like they're going to be getting themselves another Gardevoir. They'll play Guzma and Hala here. Whether they discard the 2 cards or not is... They choose to, that's A-okay, but it leaves them with no cards in hand. Power Plant, Weak Guard Energy, Stealthy Hood, none of those really matter to me, because I just want to take a knockout on what is currently in the active. So they can play the Stealthy Hood down. I've not even bothered setting up a Vulpix this game. I'm A-okay to leave it. They'll play down the Power Plant. I've got Giant Hearth, so I'm not worried about that play at all. Now, I've got 10 energy in the bin. I've got Giant Factory and Fiery Flint. So if I can get 3 more energy into the bin, which is going to be relatively easy for me to do, then I'm good to go. But the key is I need to discard that extra 1, and that Pokemon Communication is pretty much exactly the card that I need right now. It's going to give me access to another Dedenne, which can discard that extra energy from my hand, and I can get myself my Victini going. Now, my other issue is, what am I going to do to discard these energies? Really, I don't need either of these cards anymore. I've got 4 left. Right, so I'm going to grab 2 with the Fiery Flint, which leaves that Giant Hearth available to me. Because the key for me is I need to find Welder, right? So I'll attach 1 to Victini here. I can Stellar Wish now because I've got the switch in hand. I find the Welder off the top, so that's perfect. I can play this Welder now. I don't need to stress about anything else. I know 1 energy onto that Victini is going to be enough. I'm going to be able to take the knockout with the energy that's in the bin. And now Pokemon Communications is going to be enough to find me that Dedenne. I can discard these last 3 and then take a knockout with Victini, which is pretty much the perfect way that you want this matchup to go. I mean, I didn't utilize ReshiZard at all here. I didn't have to. I don't even think he was in my deck for most of this game. So I've been incredibly... kind of lucky finding all of those cards that I needed to, but it just goes to show, there is the ReshiZard, I did have it, just goes to show that it's actually not that hard to get knockouts on Gardevoirs, and imagine if I'd been attacking with ReshiZard as well, I would have been very easily able to keep up. So there's 3 prizes with Infinity, just showing off that particular matchup. That's a pretty strong one for ReshiZard. I'd always feel comfortable going into that. We've got 2 games left here. This one is against ADP, and I think this one is a little bit more of a traditional game against ADP. They're playing the Spiritomb variant, I believe, and this start is pretty good. I've got a Welder and 2 energy. I've got a target for the Welder. I can Pokemon Communication this ReshiZard away to find Dedenne if I need to. This is a perfect start. So this is exactly the sort of thing that you're looking for. Got Vulpix in the active, ready to go. Spiritomb in the active. I know they're playing ADP. It's pretty much the only deck that's being played at the moment that utilizes Spiritomb, and I'd say again, this matchup is a pretty solid one. I mean, Spiritomb struggles to knock out ReshiZard. It's going to struggle to knock out Heatran as well. You're pretty set, especially in the early game if you can get going quickly, and luckily, I've got those Welders, so I'll be good to go. Tag call here, finding ADP and Guzma. They've already played Cynthia Caitlin, so they're not going to be able to search out energy this turn, but all they care about is an attachment. There it is. They'll building Spy at once, and they'll be ready to start doing some damage to my Pokemon next turn. They're going to play Energy Spinner here, probably going for a Water Energy, so that they can GX next turn. Probably didn't need to do that, but it is important that they get themselves going. I've got a Dedenne off the top, that's perfect. So Pokemon Communication is going to be able to find myself a different attacker. I want a Heatran, so I'm going to grab that out, and then I'm going to Welder to this Heatran. This means that I can not only GX to knock out the ADP on the bench, but more importantly, I can get the knockout on the active Spiritomb as long as everything goes well here. I also get another Pokemon Communication. I've got a reset stamp to play. I don't want them to guarantee that Water Energy. They're going to need to search it out. I can Pokemon Communication away this Dedenne. What I could do is I could find another Pokemon, or I could just thin a Jirachi out of my deck. I don't really need them anymore. I've got 1 in play, and I'm not expecting it to ever get knocked out. So I'll just Dedenne one of those away. Just a free discard for me, and hopefully I can find an... Oh, this is such an awkward situation, because I could guarantee the attachment, or I could go for the switch. I went for the switch and missed it. Means that this Vulpix is going to be stuck in the active. I probably could use this Pokemon Communication to throw away one of these other Pokemon and get another Vulpix if I need one, but I think the more important thing is I just want to keep that in play so that I can find another Dedenne if I need it. They've gotten rid of the Heat Factory there with Chaotic Swirl, which is really bad, because now I've only got one card in my deck that's going to be able to search for energy. That's Fiery Flint. And the two Welders in my hand are pretty much useless now, so luckily I've got myself an attacker powered up. I've got Victini ready to go. I've got another Heatran that can either be discarded or can be utilised as an attacker. Now, they're going for an attachment to Spiritomb, so this is a blessing in disguise for me, right? That attachment to Spiritomb means that they're one turn away from GXing on that ADP. They're going to take a prize, but that doesn't matter. If everything goes my way, I'm going to force them to try and take multiple prizes anyway. They're going to need to get gusts and stuff to find their kind of zone to be doing their knockouts. So that's a good attachment for me. It means if they want a GX, then they're going to need to attach to the ADP next turn. And now, since I've top decked the Fire Energy as well, I can just grab another Vulpix. I've almost played the Power Pad before I played the Welder there. I can Welder one energy onto, I think that Vulpix. Probably should have done it to the Victini, to be honest, but it's not the end of the world. I can escape board to this Jirachi. I can play Power Pad to put the two Welders that are in my deck back into my deck. Now I've got 3 more in there. I've got a Welder in hand. I've got an attacker that's ready to go. We can Steaming Stomp, get myself a knockout. And I'm feeling really, really strong here. The worst thing that could happen is that somehow my Heatran gets knocked out. I don't see that happening. The next worst thing that can happen is that they knock out my Vulpix, because it means I need to find another Fire Energy. Luckily found one off of the prizes, so I'm going to be able to Welder 2 energy onto Heatran this turn. Means that I'm 1 energy away from a knockout, as long as he doesn't play down a Choice Helmet. If he does, then I'm going to need to do something a little bit different. Looks like the Building Spite's going onto Spiritomb there as well. But if he does get that Choice Helmet, then it's pretty much still fine, because his Ultimate Rays are going to be doing 180 damage anyway, so that 180 damage isn't a huge deal. Great catcher coming out here. Obviously, my opponent expecting me to be able to get a knockout this turn. He's not expecting that he's going to be able to keep this ADP alive, and brings out the Dedenne, and that could potentially be annoying, but I've got the Welder in hand, so it just means now I'm looking for 1 extra energy in that Welder. I can get a Dedenne or an energy, and I will be A-OK. So Altered Creation GX coming out here, and now I've got a decision to make. Look at that, I've got a Dedenne off the top. It's fine. It's all fine. Everything's going perfectly. We're going to probably Welder to this active Dedenne. I don't want to kind of leave myself in the lurch trying to find the energy to retreat. I would rather retreat and do a bit of damage than not. And this is just perfect here. I've got the Fiery Flint. I can discard a Dedenne and an energy, which is really strong. I can pull 4 of them out. I want to thin that deck out. I've got Victini to play down. I can attach an energy to Victini as well, which is really strong. And then I can Dedenne. If I find a switch, I'm 1 energy away from attack with Victini. If I don't, I've still got enough energy ready to go. Didn't find the switch, which is disappointing. I've got the Hearth, so I can get rid of the Chaotic Swirl, and then I can just retreat manually into Heatran. I'll move all of the energy on my field up to that active Heatran, ready to take a knockout. It's a bit of a shame. I'm not going to be able to guarantee an attack next turn, especially if a reset stamp comes out, but when my opponent only has 3 cards in hand, I've got the Welder with 2 energy in hand. I'm feeling pretty good, and I have managed to get the switch off of the prizes there as well, so looking pretty strong. Next turn I can theoretically win the game. That Keldeo in play is going to be an easy target for Victini. It's just a matter of whether or not I can get enough energy in play to take that knockout. It is a bit of a shame that I have to GX that ADP, but I'd much rather GX the ADP than him power up a Keldeo. There's 6 energy in the bin. If my opponent manages to knock me out somehow, I've got the game. He's not going to knock me out because he's got no energy available. I'm going to need to retreat this Heatran, I think. So I've got 6 in the bin, 3 will come off of the Heatran, that's 9. 9 times 2 is 18, 180 damage. So as long as nothing crazy happens here, I should be ready to win this game next turn. Opponent taking a while off of this tag call, which is fair enough. You've got to make sure that you do the right decision for this one. I'm going to grab Guzmahala and Cynthia Caitlin. guess he could grab a Rainbow Energy to attach to Spiritomb, but that would require that he has 4 cards in hand and one of them's a switch, so that would be pretty significant. Gets rid of the reset stamp, so for me that's a massive win. Even if he does find a switch here, that is perfectly fine. I'm not worried about that because he's got rid of the stamp. I'm going to be able to do what I need to do. There goes the Rainbow Energy, and he does have the switch in hand, so this is going to be very annoying to deal with. This Spiritomb's going to do a fair hunk of damage. Anguish Cry is going to do 160. I don't know if he utilised his ability there or not. I don't know, but that's okay. What I could do is I could weld it to this Victini. If I find 2 energy, I just win the game, so I'll go for it. Attach those 2 fire energy to Victini, but I don't find the energy. That's okay. I guess I can switch into this Jirachi. It'll thin a switch from my deck, which is a good thing in the long run. If I do happen to get randomly stamped, that would be painful. I can grab Giant Hearth here, which will get rid of that Chaotic Swell again, but it's not going to find me the energy. It just means now I'm going to need to take an extra turn. Now my opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, so I'm not super worried about it, but I am going to need to take an extra turn. I'll put this Heat Train into the active. I won't move any energy. I'll just Steaming Stomp for knockout, and then if my opponent does manage to do something, they'll get... if they do manage to find some random way to knock me out, then that's fine. I win the game. If they can't, then I just retreat and win. The worst case scenario for me is this one card is randomly like a Stamp and a Gust. So, I mean, they could get that with Ordino, but it's very unlikely. So, looks to me like my opponent's in a bit of a sticky situation. There's almost nothing they can do now. Rainbow Energy attaches to Ordino and retreats to Keldeo. That seems like a submission to me. I've got 1 more energy if I needed it, but I don't. I can just retreat straight into Victini. 3 energy going into the bin means that I've got 9. 9 times 2 is 18. That's a knockout on Keldeo, and there's another game. That is the way that I would expect most ADP matchups to go, unless your ADP opponent is going really, really quickly. If they manage to get everything that they need really fast, then you just need to make sure that you're just as fast as them. But obviously going first in that matchup really, really helps. Our final game here, and this is up against a deck that I think is going to be really, really strong in the new Sword and Shield format, and that is Pikachu Zekrom. Did see a bit of play over the recent Standard Tournament weekend at Bochum Regionals, and it will see play in Melbourne as well. So if ever there's a chance to test against a very strong deck, this is the one. Now, Picarom's a very interesting matchup. It's got some weird kind of interactions that you need to be aware of. One of the things that I really like to do in this matchup is utilize Reshiram Charizard to Flare Strike for 230, and then use the Mew, which is also supporting, in order to take that knockout a bit later on. So I should be in a pretty strong position, even if they do pop off, as long as I can get myself a decent setup. Worst thing that could possibly happen is just getting absolutely destroyed off of the setup, and then I'm very unlikely to win. But I'm pretty much in as worse a situation as possible going up against Picarom here. I don't have water in my opening hand, and he's going first, so that is a bit of a concern. I've got 2 energy here, and he's opened Tapu Fini, so that's a good start for me, I suppose. It means that my opponent doesn't really have access to anything of value. Tapu Fini's not going to do the job against Reshiram Charizard. I don't have any Ultra Beasts that are going to set it off. Now, they're playing Volkner here, so that's not a bad turn 1 supporter for Picarom. He's happy to just grab a Tag Call and an energy, and then that Tag Call will either find all of the Pokemon that they need, or a Pikachu Zekrom and a Guzmahala. So this seems like a pretty perfect turn 1, and there it is. So Pikachu Zekrom and Guzmahala, you can play the Picarom down. Attachment comes from the Volkner. He's got a Power Plant as well, which would be really strong had I not been holding the Heat Factory in hand. It would have locked me out of doing pretty much anything. But I do have the Heat Factory, so that's a win. I'm going to be able to play that one down. And now it's just a matter of how I sequence these events. What I want is I want 3 energy on this ReshiZard to be able to threaten a Double Blaze as quickly as possible. So I'm going to Heat Factory and see what I get. That's a really annoying draw there, getting the Giant Hearth. I've got an energy, so I can grab that. I've got Victini in hand, so I could shuffle it away, but it's a good attacker. I'll put it down, and then what I can do is I can actually play a Cherish Ball, just grab any random GX, and then Pokemon Communication that GX away for a Vulpix. It's probably the best thing that I could do here. But yeah, now I'm in a really awkward position because I don't have access to energy off of a Giant Hearth since I had to play down that Heat Factory. So I'm going to have to just Dene and hope here. If I had a Giant Hearth, then I would have played the Fiery Flint. But yeah, I don't have them, so that means that this world is only going to be for one. Still correct to play, still good to play it, but I really, really needed extra energy there, and that's a real shame. Not getting anything really of value here. I've got the Mew, so that is good. It's going to be able to help me with my maths on this Pikachu Zekrom. But there's nothing much else I could really do. I could Stamp. I think I'm going to, just because I know my opponent has Guzmahala. I want to make it as hard as possible for them to find their stadium. So as long as everything goes to plan here, this outrage doesn't really matter. A big smiley face from my opponent is not a good thing. That usually means that they're having a good time. So they've got Volkner here. They're going to be able to search for an item and a lightning energy. That energy is pretty much all that they're going to need. They could just get Pokemon communication to find Tapu Koko, which is pretty easy to do. They'll need the energy from Tapu Fini to retreat though, unless they've got a switch, which they could search for with Volkner as well. As long as they just haven't got themselves Thunder Mountain. They go for the EMAG Radar there. There's an attachment to Pikarom. I feel bad. I feel like this is going to go wrong. I've seen it before, so I know it's going to go wrong. The Escape Board goes onto Tapu Fini. They've got Thunder Mountain too, so they've got themselves an attack ready to go. They retreat into Pikarom, and then they EMAG Radar. They're going to be able to discard 2 cards here. They get rid of a Switch and a Lightning Energy. I'm just checking my discard there to see what situation I'm in. I'm going to grab Alolan Raichu and Dedenne. 2 really, really strong cards. They can play the Raichu down. They can full blitz for that next turn. The Dedenne gets rid of Malolana and Switch. So they've just gotten rid of 3 switching mechanics. So I should be all right here as long as I can get the Flare Strike off. Now, they've gone for their full blitz. They're going to attach to the Alolan Raichu and Raichu. I've got Giant Heart, so I can attack with this Reshiram here, which is really, really good. And I've got, oh, look at that, I've got the Jirachi and the Escape Board as well. So what I could do, and I think I will do, I'll evolve the Ninetales, I'll Giant Hearth away the Switch, because I don't need the Switch this turn. I'll grab myself 2 Fire Energy, and then I'll play the Welder onto the ReshiZard and see what happens. The rest of the cards, I don't need to play them now, but I think that's probably going to be the order that I'm going to play them down. So that looks pretty strong. That's a pretty reasonable hand. So I'll put the Ninetales down now. I'll grab the Jirachi onto the bench. I'll put the Escape Board on the Jirachi. I've got a Welder for next turn, and I've got a Flare Strike this turn. As long as the Giant Hearth stays in play, I should be all right. Now, worst case scenario, they Mallow and Lana, and then they full blitz again, take a knockout. That would suck. But if that happens, then I should at least have enough energy in the bin for me to be able to Victini and take a knockout. That would be great. When I Victini and take a knockout, I can also grab myself a Cherish Ball to get myself another attacker as well in a Heatran. But this is still a really awkward situation. Best case scenario for me is that they don't find any energy and they can't attack. Worst case, middling scenario is that they either retreat into the Raichu, knock me out, and then I kill with either Victini or Mew. That's a pretty bad case scenario as well, resetting Hulk, getting rid of my energy, so that sucks. Now I'm in a terrible position, because I'm going to need to get rid of this Welder if I wanted to Dene next turn. So that's really bad. Now I'm kind of hoping for the best case scenario, my opponent can't attack. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so I'm going to need the Cherish Ball, grab a Dene, and then just go for broke and hope for the best. Pokemon communication coming out from my opponent here. Shuffling away Evil Admonition Hooper. I presume you'd be looking for Zeraora in this situation to be able to move into Alolan Raichu. That would probably be the thing to be done so that they can free retreat, save that damage, and then move on with their life. It'll mean that Pikachu Zekrom will still be on 230, so I'm happy with that. They grab Zapdos here, so maybe they don't have access to Zeraora. If they don't have energy and they don't have Zeraora, I'll feel incredibly lucky, and I will almost definitely go on to win this game, and I think that's what's going to happen. So they've not done anything here. I'm in a bit of shock, to be honest. They've not attached, they've not attacked, nothing has happened. I can pretty much just sit here and go, okay, I'll Cherish Ball, I'll grab a Dedenne for next turn. I didn't even really need to do that. I don't know why I played that card. I can just Outrage here, take the knockout. That's a-okay, and now I'm feeling like I'm in a really strong position. And all it takes is one turn for Pikarom. If Pikarom misses for one turn, then you are in the clear. So, feeling pretty strong. I've got a whole bunch of cards in hand now, but only one of them is really strong, and that's the Welder. So, the good thing for me, though, is I'll be able to put Jirachi into the active this turn, and then potentially Welder onto a Victini. Just depends on the situation as to what ends up being the best way to go about this turn. I'll have to just wait and see what my opponent does. They've got the Jirachi here, so they're going to be able to just grab themselves anything they want. There's 3 energy in the bin, so 3 plus 4 is 7. 140 is not enough to knock out a Raichu. I'm going to need to get a hell of a lot more in the bin in order to utilize that attack. They've got Tapu Koko, so they're going to probably be able to get the knockout with Zapdos, though they will need 2 Electro Power for that. They haven't played any yet, so they've probably got them. The way that they're playing looks like they might. So Tapu Koko pops, gets the extra energy onto Raichu. Zapdos is going to be able to move into the active and take a knockout with 2 Electro Powers, but that's 3 cards out of their hand. What are the chances? Well, they've got a Volkner, so they can search for one of them for free, so that seems pretty good. They're going to be able to retreat out of the active, attack with Zapdos, and then I'm kind of in an awkward position. I'm kind of like, alright, well, I can't really justify knocking out a Zapdos with a Victini, but I guess I could. It just means that my knockout on the Rai is going to be really, really tough. Best case scenario for me is that I'm able to find enough energy to gust and hit into this Rai, hopefully knock it out in one shot. If I can do that, then I am absolutely in the clear. The other reason I don't want to knock out this Zapdos is because I don't want to go down to 2 cards. 2 cards is a real awkward number for Ability Zard. It doesn't really like to go to 2 cards. It's happy to go to 3, just doesn't want to go to 2. So I think hopefully I can get this, get the knockout on this Raichu. Worst case scenario, I'll at least be able to tap it for a bit. So 140 damage with Victini at the moment. I'm going to Welder the 1 energy onto that Victini. And hopefully I'll be able to get myself something. I've got 2 energy there, so I could potentially Ninetales now. That'll put me up to 9, so 180. I could be greedy. I could just Dedenne this hand away and hope that I get my last half or a Fiery Flint. If I do that, I could potentially win the game. So I'll put 2 in, go to 9. I'd need 4 more. It'll be really awkward. I don't even know if it's possible. But I'm definitely going to need an attachment. It's just whether I go for it now or not. I've got a Dedenne and a Stellar Wish. But if I Dedenne, then I'm discarding pretty much all of the Pokemon that I need. I've got 7 energy. I've got the Giant Hearth in there as well. This is going to be a real tough one. And this is a decision that could go either way. At the moment, I'm thinking, well, I can't really get the knockout, but what's the most amount of damage I can do? I want to guarantee an attack. I'm going to attach. I'll just play the Dedenne. I'll put myself in a position where I can at least do like 200 damage, maybe a little bit more. I managed to find 3 energy and Giant Hearth here, so that's really strong. I can Giant Hearth. I can discard an energy, which is really, really good. Puts me with 2 energy in deck. I've got 9 in the bin now. I'm going to have 11 when I knock out, when I attack into this Rai. So that's going to be 220. And now this is a really interesting number. 220 plus 50 is 270. That's a knockout. So I think what my game plan here is going to be is I'm going to gust out the Rai. I'm going to grab myself this Heatran. I'm going to hope that I don't get stamped. Again, didn't need to play that Cherish Ball then. Could have just held on to it, but no, I'm a greedy guts, so I'm going for it. I can gust out this Rai, attack it with Victini, put it on 220 HP, force them to deal with the Victini. If they can't deal with the Victini, then I've got the Heatran that can come in and finish the job. The worst thing that could possibly happen here is that I get reset stamped to 3, but I've still got access to Jirachi, so I should theoretically be good to go. But this is why I should not have played that Cherish Ball. It was absolutely the wrong decision. You're seeing me misplay all over the place here. I'm going to Infinity. We'll do 220 damage, and then hopefully everything goes well. My deck is pretty much all Fire Energy though, so that's bad. That's pretty bad. But The game is in sight. If they attack with the Raichu, then all I need is an energy and a Heatran, and I have those things now. If they do manage to switch with Zapdos and take the knockout that way, they'll need an Electro Power. They need an Electro Power with the Raichu as well. I mean, they could do it. They can search out that in here, but they're going to grab the reset stamp now, so I could get completely punished for it, but people who play ReshiZard know that you never get punished off stamps to 3, please. I'm sure I'll get exactly what I need. The worst thing that's going to happen here is that my Mew Mew is actually, it's just that little tiny bit away from being able to snipe and knock out. If I had have discarded 1 more energy, then I pretty much would have had the game wrapped up. But stamp to 3, get exactly what I want. My lucky boy. They're going to Lightning Ride, which is a bit annoying, because they're going to move to the bench, but I've got access to all the energy in my deck. I've got a Switch, I've got Heatran, I've got the Fire Energy. I'm going to be able to GX, take a knockout on that Rai, and we'll take that to the bank. That is a perfect game. Obviously, had a little bit of luck off of that stamp, and my opponent missed a turn, but I did have the follow-ups, so if I was able to get there, then it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. That's the end of that game, and now I guess I'll quickly show you the list. So this is it. This is the list that we've just seen in action. I think this is probably the best list that I could have come up with for my particular format. As I mentioned, there are obviously some struggles against Mewtwo and Mew, but in Adelaide, people tend to veer towards Malamar instead for whatever reason, so this seems like a pretty solid place to begin. I'm going to miss Ability Zard. I don't think it's got what it needs moving into the new format. With Heatran GX, it could potentially be useful, but I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think there are other decks that are more powerful. If you're watching this video and you're playing in the Cup on Sunday against me, then take a look at the list. This is it. This is the 60 cards that I'm going to be playing. So have a look. Otherwise, maybe just put this one in the back of your mind and think about all the fun times you had playing Ability Zard. Maybe you can play it one more time just like I have. So thank you very much for indulging me this one video to be able to show off one of my favourite decks from the last few weeks, just as a car drives past my window, of course. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back to our testing of Sword and Shield format tomorrow. If you like the content, then subscribe, button here. If you like the content, watch the videos here. Or check out this playlist. I can never point to it, I can never get far enough across. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at @thesableeyes_YT. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.